So, there's this huge new project in the works for one of India's most ancient landscapes, the Aravalli Range. On one hand, it's being sold as this incredible ecotourism game changer. But on the other, well, critics are raising some serious red flags. So, what's the real story here? Let's get into it. Okay, first things first, let's just wrap our heads around the sheer scale of this thing. We're talking about a proposed safari park that would cover a massive 10,000 acres. That's across the Gurugram and New districts in Haryana. I mean, to give you some perspective, that's bigger than a lot of cities. So, yeah, this isn't just some little nature trail, it is a monumental project. And the ambition here is just as big as the land area. The goal isn't just a park, they're aiming for Asia's largest curated safari. The whole idea is to create this massive vision that puts the region on the global tourist map, and, of course, brings in a lot of economic development. And that really brings us to the heart of the whole issue, right? Is this a visionary project for tourism, or are we putting a fragile, and I mean absolutely essential, ecosystem in serious danger? Well, as you can probably guess, the answer to that is complicated and very, very debated. So, this gets us into what I'm calling the project's central paradox. There's just this huge gap between the grand vision and the reality of what's happening on the ground. Yeah, and one expert really hit the nail on the head with this. They said there's a fundamental disconnect between development and conservation. That one phrase pretty much sums up the entire debate. The project's goals seem to be pulling in one direction, while real conservation needs are pulling in the complete opposite. So let's break that down. Here's the clash in a nutshell. Officially, the vision is all about ecotourism and boosting the economy. Sounds great, right? But critics, the people on the ground, they see something totally different. They're really worried that this is less about ecology and a whole lot more about building a commercial amusement park, smack in the middle of a natural heritage site. Okay, so to really get why this is such a big deal, we have to understand what's at stake. I mean, why are the Aravallis so important? The simple answer is that this isn't just any old patch of land. It's basically a lifeline for the entire region. So, this ancient mountain range does four incredibly critical jobs. First, it's the green lung for the National Capital Region, one of the most polluted areas on the planet. Second, it's a literal wall that stops the Thar Desert from creeping further east. Third, it acts like a giant natural sponge, soaking up rain and recharging the groundwater that millions of people depend on. And finally, it's a vital wildlife corridor, a highway, really, for animals like leopards, hyenas, and so much more. Now, once you understand all that, the red flags that experts are waving, well, they start to make a whole lot of sense. They're looking at this project and seeing a potential cascade of serious problems. All right, threat number one, habitat fragmentation. Think about it. When you start building roads, fences, and big visitor centers inside 10,000 acres of forest, you're basically slicing it up into smaller, disconnected pieces. This completely shatters those natural corridors we just talked about, which can trap animal populations and, you guessed it, lead to a lot more human-wildlife conflict. Then you've got the legal side of things. A huge chunk of this area is legally classified as forest. That means it's protected by India's Forest Conservation Act and a whole bunch of Supreme Court rulings that basically say you can't do non-forest stuff here. So critics are looking at the plans for massive construction and saying, wait a minute, this seems like it could be a direct violation of the law. And now we get to what might be the single biggest, most mind-boggling issue of all: water. The two districts where this park is supposed to be built, Gurugram and New, are already officially labeled as groundwater overexploited zones. All that means is they are pumping out way, way more water from the ground than nature can possibly put back. Just how bad is it? Well, in a lot of places there, the water table has dropped to over 1,000 feet deep. Can you imagine that? People have to drill these incredibly deep, super expensive wells just to find any water at all. This isn't some far-off problem, it's a daily struggle for survival. Okay, and this is where that disconnect we mentioned earlier just becomes impossible to ignore. On one hand, you have a devastating water crisis, with water tables over 1,000 feet deep. And on the other hand, the project's plan includes building a massive underwater world for tourists. I mean, an attraction that will need a ton of water. The contradiction here is just, wow, it's pretty stark. So when you lay it all out, you can really see the fundamental clash in thinking. The project's approach is a zoo safari with lots of infrastructure. The alternative is rewilding and protecting the habitat. For water, the project wants high-consumption amenities. The alternative is rainwater harvesting and recharging the groundwater. For tourism, it's mass commercial tourism versus low-impact, community-led efforts. We're really talking about two completely different philosophies here. But here's the important part. Critics aren't just sitting around pointing out all the problems. They're actively proposing an alternative vision, a totally different path forward for the Aravallis that they believe could actually work.
And the core idea is actually a pretty powerful shift in thinking. They're saying, let's move away from this idea of a commercial zoo safari and instead create a genuine Aravalli conservation and rewilding project. The main goal wouldn't be to build a tourist attraction, but to actively heal this really important but damaged ecosystem.
So, what does that actually look like in practice? Well, they've laid out a pretty clear 5-step plan. Step 1, declare it a national park. That gives it real, long-term legal protection. Step 2, launch a massive rewilding project using native Aravalli species. Step 3, and this is crucial, empower the local communities to be partners in conservation. Step 4, if you're going to have tourism, make it low impact. We're talking nature trails and education, not theme parks. And finally, step 5, prioritize water conservation above everything else, focusing on things like rainwater harvesting. So at the end of the day, we're left with two very, very different futures for this ancient landscape. And the choice between them really comes down to a fundamental decision about what we, as a society, truly value. There's a quote from the source material that really puts this whole thing into perspective. It says, "The Aravalli Hills are not merely a piece of land, but a vital ecological and climatic regulator." I think that says it all. This isn't just real estate. It's a living system that keeps the whole region in balance. And that leaves us with one last big question. This isn't really just about one safari park. It's about our much bigger relationship with the natural world. Standing in the shadow of one of the planet's oldest mountain ranges, what kind of future do we really want to build? Is it one based on commercial entertainment? Or is it one based on ecological restoration? The whole debate over the Aravalli Safari Park really forces us to confront that choice head on.